Hey everybody, welcome back to another video. Hope you guys been enjoying the content channel as of late. Will be perfectly honest with you, there's a little part of me that's frustrated because I just tried to record this and my editing software decided to crash, so I have to now completely re-record my thoughts here. So I actually had read these articles, so I won't really get into all like these nitty gritty here. So I guess it'll probably be a shorter video now. Um, but I wanted to kind of highlight a little bit about what's been going on with these unions. Specifically WGA, we've talked about them before, a lot of how they're not treating their members fairly, and the future for what these unions can be can look like. But more or less, as the video is titled, more about the fallout that came from these strikes. Because a lot of what's happening right now, I think, this is a direct result of the strike. Some of which is separate from it, but it's the mentality of the unions that are taking shape right now, and I feel that are a little bit more apparent today. Maybe because of the strikes, maybe because of just more awareness, maybe just more of a care on my end. I don't know, but specifically this article I want to talk about. This one right here, um, I looked at in the video that no longer exists. Um, but this is a case of someone who was actually accused of this specific part of the union, union in the West. They were accused of actually firing a staff member for, or they violated labor law by firing the specific staff member who apparently helped in organizing guild members. They never specified in what capacity. Um, I guess for some form of meeting or some form of some form of something. But uh, but whatever the case may be, they seemed apparently so they violated labor law potentially for that. But the article that I really want to look at is this one because we did a read on an article that was about Don McKellar, who worked with this guy Park Chan Wook, I believe that's how I say his name, on the HBO series The Sympathizer. And if you read this article, apparently this guy specifically that you're seeing here, he apparently joined the WGA for that very reason to work on that specific show. Before that, he was not a member, so that's even more salt to the wound. First project you worked with the union has you just removed. Um, but there's some really really strange things that I found in this article. Two things really that I found very weird. So first of which is that there was a mandate or some sort of rule that's in place, and I found this to be very weird from the WGA. It says, quote, the WGA maintains that even things like cutting down a scene for time constitute writing services that are forbidden during a strike. Now, the reason why they bring this up is because the show that this guy, Park Chan-wook, and Don McKellar, the Sympathizer, that show that they worked on, they came in, it says actually down here, actually, you can read right here. It says, quote, while editing, the two received a proposal from HBO to change some of the settings. They held a brainstorming session to see if the new settings could be implemented based on the footage. However, they were aware that that new script writing was not allowed during the strike, so they did not rewrite or revise any of the existing scripts for any scenes. The new writing took place after the strike had ended. So they were brought on by HBO to help them in the editing process to, probably pad out dialogue or, provide additional dialogue here and there just to make some scenes more fluent, or at least for helping providing structure. I don't know. I don't know. Depends on depends on what it is that they were asking, I guess. But ultimately they were there as uh, half supervisors and half as as screenwriters because they provided additional dialogue supposedly. But apparently, you cannot be a part of that part of production according to WGA. You can't be partaking in the editing process, even though you don't play a vital part in that process. The technical part is what's key to the post-production part. What they're doing is providing additional services, but their primary services are already completed. So this is not solely a writing endeavor. This is an editing endeavor that just needs some additional dialogue potentially to make the scenes work better. Now, the DGA actually has a different position on this. They actually believe that they are wrong and that they actually will permit their directors to perform these activities during strikes. So they will allow directors to work with editors and cut down scenes and stuff like that. But that's the first part of this that I find kind of weird, right? Now, keep in mind, Park Chan-wook, which I hope I'm saying his name right, and Don McKellar, they're both banned from the union. They're both banned from the union. Here's the weird thing. So apparently, Park, I don't know if the same thing applies to Don. Under federal law, the expulsion has no impact on Park's ability to write on WGA covered projects. It does mean that he cannot vote in guild elections or be eligible for guild awards, though. But apparently, he can still work for the union, even though he was expelled. I would think that if you're expelled from the union, you wouldn't have access to their projects, right? Or at least if you were banned, I would. It's like that's a weird thing. But apparently, it's under federal law, so it's not technically the union's position. If the union had their way, it would probably be a different story. But this is federal law, so this is a different story. So, but this is to me, and apparently they had also expelled another writer that we didn't talk about, Edward Drake, who wrote and directed an indie film, Guns Up. He allegedly was working, excuse me, on production when the strike began. Allegedly, he made forbidden scripts revisions during filming, which again is like, is he like, apparently he has to stay like with the script that he had written. He apparently can't just, no improvisation, nothing like that. It's just, no, you have to stick with what you wrote, buddy. It's like, no. And again, a hypocrisy, because we know that people during this time, one, were working, and two, were not sticking with the things that they conceived at a certain point in time. Things change during production, things change during post production, and of course the unions are aware of it. They're aware of the process, and they're aware that people are working, right? It's just a lot of the spirit of the strike was almost like a false sense of security, because you have people who participated in those strikes that I guarantee you are not on the same level as a lot of these major stars that appeared during strikes, like Mark Ruffalo and this and that. They're not on the same level as these guys. So when they are forfeiting work, it really penalizes them and it really affects them in a large way. And I remember hearing about some actors that there's like an actors fund that apparently exists that for like people who are struggling, I guess, in Hollywood and stuff like that. Apparently, I don't know if that became like a much bigger thing because of this, because of the strikes. But it just again illustrates and people like Mark Ruffalo and all these big people, they're fine because, well, they can afford to go on strike. And for a lot of them, the spirit of these strikes too, when you actually look at the videos, I remember one specifically, I think Mark Ruffalo was in it. No one was really taking it that seriously. It was more fun for them, but it wasn't a serious endeavor. It was just fun for them. You know what I mean? And if you're really serious about something and you're just acting like you're on vacation, and then also like these condescending things. I remember I forget who said what, but it was like one of these actors was talking about how the struggles for certain kinds of actors, and I'm like, don't you get paid a certain amount of money? Like, and you're talking about currently the struggles for actors right now. I get you can be sympathetic, but it's also extremely hypocritical given your position right now, you know. Um, but maybe I'm just being a little cynical on that end. But things like this illustrate just where things were during the strike, specifically with the WGA. Now, SAG is now turning into a new era because we have a new president now, Sean Astin, who you guys may be familiar with Lord of the Rings and the Goonies. He is now going to become the president of SAG-AFTRA. Fran Drescher, who she previously held that position or still holds that position currently, but she was the one actively also during the strikes with the SAG-AFTRA union. Yeah, I disagree with a lot of what she said, what she did during that time. Um, yeah, and she stepped down. She volunteered, I believe, stepped down. She didn't go for another election, rightfully so, because I'm pretty sure the union wanted her out of there. Because as far as I've read and just how the strikes went, people were not happy with her, and they were not happy with how she handled it. And I'm one of those because I really think this union specifically had made those strikes a hell of a lot more difficult than they needed to be. Um, so we are going to be entering a new era pretty soon here. So hopefully this guy uh, gets this union under control because um, you know just how those strikes affected people. I already can sense, or I could feel people who have been heavily affected by the strikes in the vein of a false security that was probably made for a lot of the people that believed that they were actually doing something worthwhile, but you're forfeiting work because of it, and you're not in a same position as a Mark Ruffalo or whoever else was out there. I think like Sarah Paulson was a part of the strikes too. You're not on the same level as these guys. They can afford to go months on end without doing work. The other people can't. So they're going to suffer as a result, you know. And I'm pretty sure they did. I'm pretty sure there's people who did, and they probably in some ways feel betrayed because they were given this idea that they were going to get more money, and then they really, really didn't. You know, everything remains the same. You know, so hopefully someone like Sean gets this union. Brings this union under control. Or at least it doesn't get things out of hand, and hopefully places like WGA really get their shit together too, because a lot of these rules and practices, it's just really strange, and it just again I think kind of highlights a lot of just how these unions not only treat each other but also highlight again the hypocrisies within just their form of unity, because they were always preaching that during the strikes, like, oh, we are standing together, we're going to be strong, but yet you have this union dictating what the editors should do, you had the actors dictating uh, uh, the actors like dictating, or not the actors themselves, but the union dictating what the actors can or cannot say on social media or who they can talk to, even though we all know at the end of the day, people were still working regardless. It's a huge hypocrisy. So yeah, so I think that these unions need to be shaken up a little bit, and hopefully, with this newfound leadership at SAG, hopefully one of these unions at least will be forging a better path for these unions, because these strikes really kind of put a bad taste in a lot of people's mouths when it came to these unions. I think even the studios a little bit, just because you know it it was very much so a meaningless endeavor. And the studios literally could not do anything. They could not afford to do this thing. They couldn't afford to pay the unions anymore. If they could have, they would have, because, well, the actors and writers and all these people, they are what literally generates them money. So they're not going to go against that, you know. But they couldn't do anything about it, you know. And luckily, they came down with a hammer and said, "No, we will pay you this, and that's that." And the union went, "All right, that's fine." So hopefully they get their acts together a little bit. I'm not saying that they're terrible unions or anything like that, but it's just to highlight what the strikes ultimately create within these unions. It's a little bit of a hypocrisy that is formed, and I think that it just a little more consistency will help in actually feeling that these unions are more more legit uh, than anything. But we'll see how the future holds for them. But those are my thoughts on some of these little news bits and just how I personally feel, how it kind of relates to the whole fallout that came with the actors and writers strike. There were people that were affected, and it was needlessly so. There was no need for any of that to occur, in my opinion, especially given the results of what the strikes ended up being. It really did not amount to much, if you ask me. But you guys, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below in regards to all the things regarding the actors and writers strike. If any of you participated in those strikes, let me know. I mean, if you have a viewpoint, a very different viewpoint than mine, I would love to hear it. But let me know all your thoughts in the comment section below. And that's going to be it for the video, guys. Thank you guys for tuning in. And until then, I will catch you guys in the next video. Bye.